everyone, my name is Jennifer and welcome to A Vintage Vanity. I am super excited for today's video because, well, you guys are here, as well as the fact that today we are continuing our journey of sewing through Gertie's Ultimate Dress Book. Super exciting, and I'm also excited because today's video has been sponsored by one of my favorite fabric resources, myfabricdesign.com. They are a website where you can actually buy fabric that's been designed by people and uploaded onto their site, or you can actually design your own fabric, upload it to their site, and print out how little or how much of fabric you want. It's absolutely brilliant. In this video, we are going to be conquering the Emerald Fail Party Dress, which is a gorgeous dress. It is a fully lined and boned bodice with a halter strap and that amazing like bias strip that we love so much from the Shaheen dresses, and a full skirt, but it's not just a full circle skirt, it's a pleated full circle skirt, which I've not done before, so I'm very excited. And we're also going to be working with steel boning, which is another thing I've never done before. So this dress, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted the pattern to be on the dress, but I knew that I wanted to work with a lighter weight material, something that would be really breezy and easy in the summertime. But I wanted the pattern not to read specifically summer. I wanted it to be something I could layer up and maybe wear in the cooler months as well. Now, I knew for a fact, since I wanted that lighter weight feel, I wanted to work with their organic cotton sateen. It is a gorgeous fabric and it has this lovely hand feel to it, but it is lighter weight. So when I was on the website, I was like, oh, I don't know what I want the pattern to be, because you can get lost looking at all these designs. There's so many great ones. So I just started randomly putting in words and seeing what came up, and I must have been really cold that day because I typed in frost and I found this really gorgeous pattern. It was this dark blue with these amazing, almost like Art Deco feel, like frost flowers coming across the pattern, and I was in love, and I was like, that's it. And when I ordered it, I decided I wanted it to be a fairly large print, so I settled on a DPI of 175. Now, because there is directionality in this fabric, I actually over ordered, and I ordered about 6 yards. I did not need that many. I probably could have gotten away with definitely 5 yards, maybe even 4.5 yards. And one of the reasons for that is because this fabric is really wide. It's 54 inches wide, which is amazing, especially when you're making these fuller skirts. And keep in mind, once you order, because they do print the fabric when you order it, it will take about 10 to 15 days before it arrives on your doorstep. The pattern pieces you will need for this dress are: on page 1, you'll need the strapless bodice center front. On page 2, you'll need the strapless bodice center back. On page 8, you will need the strapless bodice side back. On page 6, you'll need the strapless bodice side front, as well as the box pleated skirt front, and it's actually 3 pieces. And finally, on page 5, you'll need the box pleated skirt back, and again, that comes in 3 pieces. For a look at how I trace those patterns, I will place a card on the screen, not sure which side, on the video where I walk through that. The only thing different with these patterns is you'll notice you have these small directional arrows on them. That's to indicate what direction your pleat is going to be folded in, as well as the fact that the skirt comes in 3 separate pieces. You'll notice each of them are labeled A1, A2, and A3, and you'll simply match up the edges of each skirt to the corresponding skirt piece. Then you'll simply tape the pieces together. The only real change to the layout is I wasn't able to do the front skirt piece on the fold of my fabric. I actually had to cut that in 2 sections, and I just added a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and sewed right up the center. Okay, I'm gonna get up on my tiny little muslin soapbox for a minute and remind everybody always make a muslin when you're dealing with a new pattern, even if it's just doing the bodice, because the skirt on this is so free-flowing that it really shouldn't be a problem. But even though I've already made a dress from this book, and I already knew that I had to size up from a 16 to 18, so I automatically did that, I can't guarantee that that is still going to fit me perfectly, because this bodice is completely different than the other bodice. This is a princess seam bodice, so who knew? Who knew what was going to happen? You know what I didn't expect to happen when I tried on this bodice? Was the fact that I was going to end up with pancake boobs. Yeah, that happened. I knew, as always, I'd have to do a sway back adjustment. So I went ahead and it just kind of tucked that up so I could automatically figure out what I needed to take that up by. But, oh my goodness. Those boobs. They were such a problem. Because I went and I did what I normally do for full bust adjustments, and I was gonna film it for this, but let me tell you, this video would be like a year long if I had filmed that process. We will get into it in the next video that we film for this series, but let me just tell you, I did 4, count them, 4 muslins to perfect that bodice fit. But especially considering that this, even though it has the halter straps, it is not held up by the straps. You're not putting the strain on the straps. It is being held up by the bodice itself. So if that's not fitting well, you're going to end up like struggling and pulling up your dress throughout the night. So I really wanted to make sure I had the fit down. But what I will do is in the description box below, I will leave a link to 2 videos that I very much like as far as doing full bust adjustments on princess seam dresses. And one of them is my sewing better half, which is Bianca from Vintage on Tap, as well as the crafty pinup. Now for this one, I ended up actually, let's just say like marrying them, mashing them up, if you will, to Franken full bust adjustment. Once I finally perfected the bodice pattern, I was ready to cut it out of my main fabric. Now, not only are you cutting those bodice pieces out of your main fabric, but you're also going to cut out pieces for your underlining as well. For my underlining, I just used a basic muslin, and the underlining's purpose really is to help with, so that your boning really doesn't show through on the outer side, and especially with this being a lightweight fabric, it's going to add a little bit of more heft to the fabric, especially through the bodice, a little more structure as well. And then also, if your fabric is, you know, slightly see-through, it's going to make it a little more solid. Also, I would suggest if you are lining with your same fabric to actually mark those pieces that are the lining with like an L or something like that, so you can differentiate them from the main fabric. It's especially helpful if you are pattern matching for your main fabric, but obviously for the lining, you don't really need to worry so much about pattern matching. The book is great because it's going to tell you exactly how to underline and why you are underlining. The one thing I did a little bit differently is that the book actually says to hand base the underlining to the main fabric to prevent any type of shifting in the fabric. I didn't do that. I just machine basted them together. But what I did do is I used a lot more pins than I would normally do. So that way when I'm sewing the fabrics together that they're not shifting. I do have to admit, I was really nervous to work with steel boning for the first time, but let me tell you, I am in love with this stuff now because, you know, it's fun. It's just fun, right? But the one thing that really excited me about this is in a lot of my princess seam dresses in the past, I've actually removed the plastic boning because at first plastic boning is great and it is as well. It's very, very flexible, not as fun. Not as fun to do this though, but it is very flexible. But what plastic boning will do, and this one's been sitting in a circle for a while, is it will start to take the shape of whatever it is doing. And when you sit down and, you know, your stomach kind of puffs out a little bit, not everybody's do that, just mine. The boning will actually, the plastic stuff will start to warp, and when you stand up, eventually it'll just be out there. And yeah, and plastic boning can break a lot easier, and steel boning, no matter how many times you sit down, it will always go back up. It is stronger. It's not going to snap like steel or like plastic boning. I am in love with this stuff. Now, we're going to jump right into sewing the steel boning into our bodice. There are a few things that you will need, and the first thing is steel boning itself. Now, you can buy the pre-cut boning, but having the continuous uncut boning is not only going to be cheaper, but you can then make the boning any length that you need. The other thing that you'll need is steel tips, because once the boning is cut, it is a very sharp edge and it could easily pierce the delicate fabric of your garment, so you want to make sure that that's protected with these tips. The other thing is you'll need something to cut the boning with. Now, they do have boning cutters on the websites, but they usually run about $35. Don't spend that much. You can go to your local home improvement store and pick up like a pair of heavy-duty wire cutters. These that I bought were about $12. And the other thing you'll need is a pair of pliers, because you'll need to squeeze that tip onto the end of your boning. The book lays out exactly where our boning is going to be placed, and that is going to be on every seam of our bodice, as well as a diagonal boning channel on the side front of the bodice. The only boning I did not put into the dress was the one right in the center front. The first thing we're going to do is sew in our boning channels. Now, you can make your own or use ribbon. I just chose to buy pre-made boning channels. It just seemed easier. And we're going to be sewing these onto the lining of the bodice, and we're going to do that on the wrong side of the fabric. Since the princess seam is a little bit trickier, I'm going to go ahead and use that as my example. All you want to do is you want to make sure that your channel is lined up and centered on the seam itself. And then I'm just going to go ahead and pin that right down. Now, when you get to the curve of the princess seam, you just want to make sure that you're holding the channel taut as well as your fabric, so you're not getting any ripples or bubbles on that. Once it's all pinned down, you can go ahead and trim the boning channel and take that over to your sewing machine. And you're going to want to make sure that when you're stitching it down on both sides of the channel, that your stitching is close to the edge as you can get. You want to make sure that you're leaving enough room for your boning to actually slide easily into the channel. And just lay that out all the way down to the bottom of the channel on the side front. After the channels are sewn on, you won't do anything more with the lining until it's sewn onto its main fabric. You'll see here that I've already done that by attaching the two pieces at the top. You'll then mark your seam allowance at the bottom of the bodice at 5/8 of an inch on the boning channel. To determine the length you need, just walk your boning down the boning channel. And when you get to your seam allowance, you'll just take a Sharpie and mark where the seam allowance hits on the boning. You'll want to make sure that your boning doesn't enter the seam allowance, because nobody wants to be trying to sew over steel. To cut the boning, you're not actually going to be cutting through the entirety of the boning. It's much too strong to do that. You're just going to end up with a sore hand. Because the boning is made up of concentric circles, you're actually going to be clipping a circle from each side of the boning piece, and it should snap right in half. Attaching the tips can be a little bit fiddly, but what you're just going to do is you're going to attach them on both sides of the boning, and you'll just take your pliers and you'll make sure to crimp from the sides and the top until the tip is nice and sturdy. Then you simply slide the boning into the channel, making sure it's slid in far enough that it is past your seam allowance. To keep it from falling out, you'll just want to stitch across the bottom of your boning channels within your seam allowance. So let's see, how did it all turn out? I am in love with this dress. The fit is absolutely perfect, and I feel so gosh darn pretty in it. And quite frankly, isn't that what we all want at the end of the day, is to feel pretty in our clothes? What's funny is, even though this dress has pleats in the skirt, lining, underlining, steel boning, I still think this was an easier sew than the A-line dress. And I think that it really comes down to the work that was done, that I had to do in the sleeves of that A-line dress. And if you haven't seen that video, I will place a link on the screen, a card on the screen to that. So I think this is a really great dress for a first boning dress. And yeah, you guessed it, I snuck in some pockets there. Of course I did. Why not? Can I just say how much I am in love with this dress? I'm so in love with this dress. The only thing I would really change if I was to make this dress again is when I attach the bias trim. Right now, the steps have you attaching it after the bodice is fully constructed. I don't see any reason why you couldn't attach it after the underlining. That way each of the ends of the bias trim would be in the seam allowances. I hope you guys really enjoyed this continuing journey into So Gertie, and I would like to thank the sponsor of this video, My Fabric Design, and if you'd like to check out their website, I have left it conveniently in the description box below. And as always, let me know what you guys thought of today's video, and if you've sewn this dress before, your thoughts on boning, leave it all in the comment section below. I love talking with you guys. And of course, if you are going to miss the space between uploads, be sure to follow me on all the social medias as a Vintage Vanity. And of course, to not miss anything that goes on here on the channel, go ahead and click on my face to subscribe to this channel. If you click that boomerang you see right there, that will take you to my clothing line, Atomic Starlet. And as well, if you'd like to continue watching more videos, go ahead and click on that video you see playing there. Hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you soon. Bye.